What's up? Welcome to another edition of From Beyond Champaign. I'm Cody. You can follow me on all the socials at Cody_CHGO. As always, thank you for everyone for all your support over the last year and a half. And we finally got to this moment of coming off a brutal loss that I feel like ranks number one in the existence of this show. And so I had no other choice. Than to bring Sam Olber here. This is the crossover I think no one expected in this space, considering what's in the background of our screens. But I think it's the crossover we needed. To quote, who is it? The Dark Knight or the Dark Knight Rises? I forget which one it is, but that's where that line comes from, right? Yeah. So, Sam, my man, how are we feeling after that? There's so much to talk about right now.
Yeah, I think that night, more so than loss, just that night was one of the worst nights I could remember. Really, it's got to be probably in the Brad Underwood era, and it was really tough. I kind of felt it coming at halftime, and let's get into it. I got so much to say. So.
Yeah. Okay. So before we move for any further, for everyone coming in on YouTube, please hit the like button for us. Hit the subscribe button. If you're new here, I'm going to try and lead us the best way. I've been working with Luke Stuckmeyer for the last 3.5 years, so I've learned how to do this a little bit better than maybe I did 5 years ago. And so, I think the point is let's start with the game. I want to talk about halftime, the Terrence Shannon stuff. I want to talk about Brad Underwood. I want to talk about big picture moving forward, and we'll try and do it in an hour. And my overall reaction for everyone here, if you didn't know, I was in Champaign last night. I drove all the way down. Shout out to my guy Steve Mork, who I went to college with, who's a season ticket holder for Illinois, like basically the entire athletic program. He goes to basketball, football games all the time. So he's as close to this program as anyone I know. And he somehow, some way got a hot ticket for free for me. And I sat in 244 at the very top, row 2020 in row 22, and watched hot garbage for 2 hours, Sam. I'll just say this. It was awesome until it wasn't. That's basically what it was. And my overall reaction to this is, yes, I think this is the worst loss of the Brad Underwood era, at least since Loyola. I don't know I think you can rank it in the top 5 of worst losses of his era. I don't know if it's the worst loss. At least this isn't in the NCAA tournament. And at least Michigan State was a ranked team and is a good team. And Tom Izzo is Tom Izzo and all of that. But when you look at the semantics, when you look at the expectation for this team coming into the year, when you look at, just how much this game meant with what happened at halftime or what was going to happen at halftime in this game, the intrigue, the hype coming into this game after what happened a month ago in East Lansing, this could not have hurt more. Maybe if there's a walk-off buzzer beater and you lose, like maybe that hurts more. I don't know. But the thing is that another double-digit loss at home. And I've been a Brad Underwood supporter, a defender for the entire existence of this show. And I'm not saying that we need to fire him. I'm not saying we should fire him at the end of the year. But it is starting to really get into my head that as much as I support him and as much as I want him to lead us to the promised land, there are things about Brad that he just doesn't adjust to. And so, again, we're going to talk about Brad, and it's basically all going to mix together in some aspect. But this game has his issues written all over it, and it hurts, dude. This game sucked, absolutely sucked. And we just, before we even started, we sat here and talked about how we became Illini fans, and we didn't go to Illinois and all this, but there's a reason that we're Illini fans. And like this program, the history of this program, we've seen better. And when you have a top 15 NIL budget or whatever it's called in the country, it's got to be better than this, man. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think for me, just talking about the specific game, it really, the game itself summarized my issues with the team the whole season. And that is, there's a saying in sports that flashes get you fired, and, a good example that's near and dear to our hearts is a guy like Chris Morrell, right? If for the Cubs people out there, or Justin Fields, or guys that just like when they're great, it's tantalizing, it's amazing. You look at the screen and you're like, wow, like this could be awesome. And that's what this Illinois team is, whether it was at Oregon or at Indiana or in the first 8 minutes last night. It looked like, I saw you tweet something like, I'm ready to run through a wall or whatever it was. I was going to my apartment like, whoa, like, let's go. Like that, what a statement.
Yeah.
And then it just crumbles. And, to be a really good team, you have to be consistent. It's not just about playing well in spurts. You have to play well most of the time for 40 minutes. And the bad games, the bad spurts need to be the exception to the rule. And this Illinois team, it just feels like it's the opposite. When they do make threes, when they do look good, you're at the point now where you're like, oh, I'm kind of surprised. I just expect brick after brick. And, for me, before we, like you said, we'll get into Brad later. That's a separate thing. I just am so surprised and almost like I wish the reporters would like dive into it, like, because Brad never talks about shooting. It's, hey, you can't control that. Like, yes, you can. Like, why is Kylan Boswell a 38.5% three-point shooter at Arizona, and he's come here and he literally has the yips and he doesn't want to shoot. He's shooting 23%. Rickhouse is a 40+% three-point shooter. He comes here. He's now shooting 33%. And I know the last 12 minutes or so, absolutely, you're in the double bonus or close to it. Put your head down, get to the basket, get to the free throw line. I get all that. But I also understand that this team was built. It was built, and they had tons of defensive issues yesterday we can get into too, but I'm just focusing on this part because it's mind-boggling to me. They're built around KJ making plays and setting up guys to make shots, and nobody on the team could shoot. And it's just, it really is their problem. And then you miss a few in a row, you start to get tight, and it all stems from there. But for me, the defensive stuff's been really bad too. But yesterday, it was just a great spurt followed by one of the worst spurts you've ever seen. The highs with this team are really high, but the lows, the floor is so low. It makes it very hard to take them seriously. And last night was probably the best example of it all season.
Yeah, man. The first 10 minutes of this game, you talk about the highs, dude. No alcohol or drug that I could ever take. The amount of weed that I could go get at Sunnyside down in Wrigleyville, none of that would give me the high that Illinois was giving me the first 10 minutes of this game. And it wasn't even that they were hitting threes. They were getting inside. They were driving to the basket. They were finding a way to get downhill. They were efficient in all aspects of the game. And it's like, okay, we can't expect this entirely for 40 minutes. So when Michigan State started to make that comeback and they closed the gap to a 4-point game going into half, I did feel fine at that point because I just knew that Michigan State is better than that. And Illinois wasn't going to make every shot. But the flow of the offense is what had me confident, or at least had me feeling okay, because they weren't taking just a bunch of threes. Right. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know who I should be mad at about the threes part, because you're right. Kylan Boswell shoots 38% at Arizona last year. He's got 2 years of college basketball experience under the belt coming to this program, coming home to Champaign. And for some reason, this guy is out playing cardio for 40 minutes and doing nothing. And he clearly has no confidence right now. And I don't know how you fix that, but at the same time, it's not like he is taking nothing but like step back threes like KJ likes to take, or, it's not like it's pick and pops, obviously, because he's a guard, but like he has taken, in my opinion, outside of those quick threes that I felt like he took more so early in the year and during that bad stretch, especially in January, lately when he has taken them, it's been through the flow of the offense. But the point is that he clearly doesn't have the confidence right now, and I don't know how you fix it. And
he's got the yips.
Yes, and he's got the yips, but also they're going to keep playing him because he's clearly their best defender on a defense that has trended down since Big Ten play started. So it's one of those, like, what do you do as a coach, especially since he has probably second or third most experience on this young team. Like, he's got to play. And I don't know how they get him to any form of what he was at Arizona. And I don't think he's bad. I just think he doesn't have confidence right now. And he's also like, they're not running set plays for him either. And it goes back to what you're saying. It's like KJ making plays, pick and roll, high pick and roll, drive, kick, do the weave or whatever. And, it kind of flows between him and Ivasic. And whoever makes a good pass, it feels like. I don't know, man. I'm not the biggest X's and O's guy, Sam, but all I know is that it feels like it's KJ or Ivasic or bust. Or both, it's both of them or bust. Like if they both,
and Riley's grown into it now.
Sure, yes, Riley is certainly making his case the last 4 or 5 games, right? But the point, what I'm saying though, is that because it feels like it's those 2 or 3,
right?
Kylan's not doing what he wants to do, or I don't know what, if it's what he wants to do or if it's confidence. What he's not doing anything. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, he's sick and then he comes back, but he's not playing, so it's like he's in the doghouse. Trey White
got to play more,
right? Trey White's got to play more. Yeah. I thought he should have played more last night. Like he didn't play at all, right? But he doesn't play at all. But then Humrickhouse, like, I understand why he's there, and I think that he, in certain matchups and depending on if the team is healthy or not, like, he can play a good role in this team. But when things aren't right, they're not whole, you can find a hole in him pretty quickly. Like, he is no Marcus Domask. He is no Dalton Connect. Like I heard some people try to compare him to. Like, he's a fine player, but he is a role player at best, and we know this.
Right.
But it's to bring it all back around, because I'm rambling now, and I do this a lot. Like, it's just so frustrating on all aspects, whether it's coaching or just the fact that the players aren't making shots when they're open, dude. And the team was designed to be a good shooting team, and for
100%.
some reason they're not. And I don't understand why. And so when you get downhill, when you're able to do what you do in the first half, scoring 41 points in that half, why does that go away in the final 10 minutes of the second half? The biggest part of the game, the most important part of the game. They were in this game for 37 minutes. No, that 32 minutes until they just didn't score the last 8 minutes. So the final score, it looks bad, whatever. But they were in this game. They had every reason to win it. They had every chance to take it by the throat of Michigan State, and they just didn't. And it doesn't make sense, other than everyone just wants to look at coaches. I look at Brad, and for sure, and this one, I have a lot of concerns with him on this one.
Yeah,
I keep pushing that the players, they're being paid now, man. They're being paid now. So at some point, we have to
hold them accountable.
Have to hold them accountable in some ways. I'm not going to say things about them that maybe I would say about a Cubs player on a day that they ruined my day. But at the same time, like there's got to be accountability for them too. And they had plenty of open shots in that second half that they didn't make. And it's frustrating because it's just been the same thing all year. And it just ain't working. And I just put my hands up, and you're right. Like, this team is what it is.
Right. I think there's a lot there. I think that, I'm both ways. So like, I think there's a lot to talk about with Brad, which, like we said, we'll get to. For me, though, I lean towards more frustration at Brad, the GM, and recruiter than Brad, the coach, because we know his coaching deficiencies. Because at the end of the day, look, and we don't have to get two X's and O's, but like, the way this team was supposed to be built was KJ has the basketball. Boswell's kind of the off guard, but Boswell's supposed to be able to make shots. Humrickhouse is there. He's supposed to be able to make shots. And then, I think Trey White was the opening, day or whatever starter, but Will Riley, that's actually worked. Like the vision of him turning into what he was going to be, it was going to be then Will Riley and then Tommy. And all those guys were supposed to be able to shoot, and look at what they're shooting. And so the easy thing and the correct thing, but the easy thing is to say, well, let's get our head down and drive. But that's not really what these guys do. You want to see Ben Humrickhouse drive with his head down? I don't.
No.
Boswell's pretty good at it. He's all right at it. Riley can get to the line. KJ can a little bit. Tommy's a finesse big. That's who he is. He's going to take a jump hook. He's going to spread out and shoot threes. Trey White's lost, doesn't play anymore, and we don't really know why. I do think that, one schematic thing would just be to play DGL more, because, I understand Boswell's their best defender, or at least perimeter defender. I think probably Ivisic is probably their best defender. But he's not even defending that well anymore. Like yesterday, he got beat like a drum a ton, and part of that was schemes. I think he should be playing 20, and DGL should be playing 20, and then you just ride the hot hand, who's playing better. But it's just, for me, the Brad stuff defensively, and his lack of adjustments is there. You can't have your team give up a 13-0 run at home in the first half, a 15-0 run in the second half. There's plenty there, but I just come back to, I want to know who the shooting coach is on this team. Are guys I was talking to my buddy who played, are guys maybe lifting too much? Are they putting on too much muscle? Because when you do that, sometimes that can mess with your shot. These guys, they can't shoot. When Ben Davis came in early and hit those 2 threes, it was like I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh, we're gonna actually make shots today, and then I think they made 3 the rest of the game.
Yeah,
it is unbelievable. And I play basketball at obviously a way lower level than this, but I know when you're not making shots and you start to think about it, like a guy like Boswell, or now a guy like Ben, especially Ben, because that's literally all he's here to do. I mean, it really messes with you, man. It's a confidence game. And 3 misses turns into 6, turns into 7. Now you blink. And for basically for 2025, outside of the Oregon game, they're one of the worst shooting teams in the country. And they don't seem very tough, right? The end of the Tennessee game, that Tennessee just toughed their way into that. The late games, and a lot of the games they've won that are close, Mizzou, the other night against UCLA, Wisconsin, they made those close. They were in control the whole time, and then their poor close made it a close game. They haven't really, outside of Ohio State with KJ on the bench, really taken a game late. So they don't execute close and late. They lose shooters late in games. They turn it over. There's just not a lot to like about this team outside of the fact that they do have a true, high level of talent with some NBA players like KJ and Riley. And I think Riley right now, his resurgence the last, 3 weeks is probably by far their biggest positive, because he's even playmaking well.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that could just get him some confidence, because I really want to ask you before we move on to Terrence and Brad, do you, I know the net, what's up, Sonny? I know that the net ranking's high and all that stuff, but let me ask you this, Cody. They play at Wisconsin Tuesday. They'll be dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They play Duke and MSG. They'll be underdogs. I'll be in Vegas for that game. Great. We'll bet on that and lose. They
were in Madison Square Garden. Right?
Yeah. I'll be in Vegas.
Oh, you'll be in Vegas.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then they play. I think they play Iowa. That'll be a win. And then at Michigan, home Purdue. If they only beat Iowa the rest of the way and lose their first Big Ten tournament game, and they go to Selection Sunday 18-14. People keep telling me I'm crazy. I will be sweating Selection Sunday out. I don't care what their net ranking is. 14 losses is insane.
Yeah. I would say that I would also be sweating. Oh. I don't think that's what's going to happen in terms of
going to win another one.
I think they will at least win 2 games. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say that because I had to drive home last night. So I listened to Sonny. I listened to Locked On Illini on my way home. I listened to Jeremy Werner and Derek Piper on Illini Acquire, their recap on my way home. I listened to Mike Carpenter this morning. The only one left that I haven't listened to, which will probably be up tomorrow, and it'll be more painful than all of them is when Carter Elliott and Greg Waddell from Sleepers Media do their Michigan State, Illinois recap. And they're both Michigan guys. Well, one of them, Carter Elliott's Michigan State, and Greg is a Michigan guy. And they like to stir the pot a lot, and I get very triggered by them. But I like them, and I think they're great at what they do. And it's almost like they love to really piss off Illini fans. And it's almost like a hate watch for me. But but all I will say is that, to bring that around, the Wisconsin game coming up, I feel like I'm the only one who feels confident going into that game than anyone else.
Wow. Yeah,
because I love Brad Underwood coming off a loss, and I love Illinois going up against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I guess at this point it doesn't make any sense because of what just happened. But again, it's not like Michigan State is a bad team.
No.
They should have won. Illinois is more talented than Michigan State, no doubt. But they've gone to Kohl Center and won there in the past. Brad has gone there in the past and won there. They beat them in December, and they like you just said, they should have won by a bigger margin, but they still won. So I feel like after watching all of those post games and me coming out thinking, wow, I'm the only one who actually feels confident going into that game.
Right.
Maybe it's pure delusion, but I like our chances coming off a loss, and I love Wisconsin having a major letdown after the win at Purdue.
Yeah, I love all that. Like, I love playing teams coming off a big win. I like off the loss. Like, in theory, I think it's a really fair take, but I just can't get over how bad this team is capable of playing. We talk about how good they are. Like, from the minute they were up 16, they lost the rest of the game at home by 30.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, 100%. Like, they can beat Wisconsin. They can. I don't know if they can beat Duke. That I'm not sure. But they definitely can beat Michigan. They definitely can beat Purdue. But I just can't. I think I'm done with hey, we're getting Wisconsin off a loss. And, hey, we're getting Purdue. Hey, and Brad's great off coming off a loss. Because even the UCLA game the other night, they couldn't put a full 40 together. They let that big kid, I forget his name.
Bildu.
Yeah. Get white hot, and this maybe is a good segue to talk Brad, because that's just my pet peeve with him defensively.
We basically have been, so it's fine.
Yeah, and you get into you look up. I was watching the game with my dad, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're up 2. Like, we need this game. Like, they just don't inspire any confidence. Here's what I'll say about Brad that really
that is true, that they don't inspire confidence. And I'm not saying that I'm feeling confident going into the game. I'm just saying that these are the reasons that give me hope, I guess. So again, it could be complete delusion. It really could be. Here's
my take. I'll do like a quick 2-minute on Brad. Like, I'm with you. I'm a Brad guy because I remember 2011 through 2019, just Illinois is on, maybe, and that you can't put a price or an emphasis on how defeating that is when you don't want to watch Illinois basketball because they're that bad. And he has made them relevant again, and for that I'll always be grateful. He's a phenomenal recruiter, and I think in ways he is a good coach. But the lack of in-game adjustments, and the word I would use is his stubbornness with his schemes, are infuriating. And last night's the best example. Indiana had a great success against Michigan State playing a zone. Illinois is very analytical. They like to get up threes and not allow a lot of threes. Well, Michigan State says, fine, we don't like to take threes. We're not good at them. So they're happy to oblige. And, for the last, what would you say, 30 plus minutes of that game, they scored almost every possession. I mean, it was layup lines for the most part. And Brad refuses to practice zone or throw in a zone, a 1-3-1, just maybe for a couple of minutes to just, stem the tide, take a team out of their rhythm. And then, offensively, they don't run a ton of sets. They're out of bounds plays, always leave a lot to be desired. For me, Brad, his in-game coaching, his in-game adjustments, I've never really, watched him go up against an Izzo or a Matt Painter and go, man, we had the the coaching advantage today. And those guys are 2 elite coaches. So it's at the end of the day, it's fine. I still rather have Brad than probably what's under the mystery hats. But I'm watching the game. It's like, all right, like we get it. You're forcing the kid to shoot that hit 3 threes, but he's hot now. Kohler. He's hot now. So like basketball's a rhythm game. You know, I played pickup yesterday. I hit 5 threes because I hit a couple of them. Next week, I'll probably hit 0. Yeah. But it's like, you know, once you see the ball go in, the percentages change a little, Brad. You got to be a little bit more flexible.
Yeah. This is giving me, or it's triggering my PTSD from whenever Craig Counsell talks about how we're going with the matchups related to some bullshit, you know, like this is exactly what's triggering me.
I don't want to go. Please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do I don't want to talk about the Cubs. Man.
Oh man. So I'm with you when it comes to in-game adjustments. And I've said that a lot, as much as I've defended him. I think what grinds my gears about the Brad haters is like, they'll even be loud after an Illinois win. You know what I mean? And it's like they don't appreciate like where we're at. And so that's why at times I feel like I go to the ends of the earth to defend him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's not perfect, or else there'd be a national title hanging in the rafters at State Farm Center, right? And I don't think he's going to get fired this offseason even if they finish 18-14, if they only win 1 game the rest of the way, right? He's not getting fired because he just went to the Elite 8 last year, right? And you won a Big Ten title. You've been to the NCAA tournament every single year the last 5-6 seasons. If you don't need more, you nearly have more Big Ten conference wins over the last 5.5 years than any other team, more than Izzo, more than Matt Painter, more than whoever else that I'm blanking on at this in this 5 to 6 year span.
Greg
Gard. Greg Gard. It could be different now because of how this season has gone, but he's at least top 3. I think
he's still top 2.
Yeah. So these are things that, like you said, when you bring up 2011 through 2019 and just not being interested and thinking about players like Kendrick Nunn just being absolute terrible looks on this program and you know, just some of the worst teams that you've seen. I remember watching Illinois lose to UIC at the United Center back in the day, man, like to Robert Krebs. Like I have not forgot that shit is painful stuff, right? Oh. So yes, I would take everything that we've gotten, and even last night, over all of that. No, forever. I would take what we're getting with Brad Underwood over all that. But I think you can also say that Brad has set a standard here at Illinois, man. He has set a standard, and I say this a lot about what the Cubs did in 2016. They set a standard. They 100%. Freaking set it themselves, that the standard had set, and that's why I'll sit on Twitter and I'll bitch about Tom Ricketts not going over the luxury tax. You know what I mean?
It's a great point.
So it's like the same thing. When you raise the bar and you go into Big Ten media days and say that I love this roster and that I'm going for national titles, then that's what we're expecting, Brad. That's what we're expecting.
That's a great point. And standards, sorry to cut you off, standards, like that's everything in life. Like if you're in a relationship with somebody and you know, every, you know, couple days you take care of dinner and you do all this, and then all of a sudden you just stop doing it, you know people are going to comment because you've set a standard that's what you do. And so if the standard, you know, the Cubs analogy, which, you know, we're making way too many, was great because
we just had to,
because it changed everything. The expectation is to win. And now you go to an Elite 8. You've been a 1 seed recently. And then Brad himself set the expectation. I don't know the exact quotes, but he said something along like, this is a really deep roster or whatever. Like he said it himself. And so people are going to be upset. For me with Brad, the word choice that I would use if I had to describe him negatively, which I wouldn't like to do, is just stubbornness. Like even last year, this is a basketball nerdy thing because I'm a basketball nerd. But like when they played Purdue, if you remember in West Lafayette, I think that was without Shannon and Ty Rodgers. Zach Edey wasn't. Do you remember that? He wasn't guarding Ty Rodgers. He just stayed in the paint, and Illinois couldn't score.
And it was 5-on-4.
Yeah, yes. And then they played UConn. You know, with their big kid,
Klingen,
that's in the NBA. And he started Ty Rodgers again, and we couldn't score to start the first half or the second half. And it was just like, dude, just learn your lesson. Stop. It's okay to admit that Ty Rodgers has a shooting problem, and teams are going to expose that. Like, just little things like that, and their lack of adjustments infuriate me with him. But I still am on the side that I still think Brad is an asset to the organization, to the university and
program.
Whatnot. Yeah, the program. So.
Yeah. So I love that you brought up Ty Rodgers, because it's like no one thought that he was going to redshirt, and we didn't know until literally
The first
opening night.
Yeah,
we learned going into opening night when they played Eastern Illinois. Shout out, alma mater. Like, and it was because of Trey White, who is in the doghouse right now, not playing.
Yep.
And also, he can't shoot either.
Right.
So it's a detriment on Brad on that too, because
For sure.
Because even though he's bringing in guys like Kasparis Jakashonis and Will Riley and Tomislav Ivasic and Merez Johnson, who 31 minutes in we haven't mentioned yet, and we should have, because he was the best player on the court for Illinois last night.
He might be like a special player.
Right. Like, even though you've brought those guys in, you still went into the transfer portal and recruited over Ty Rodgers, who's a quote unquote everyday guy. Like, and you were mantra.
And you recruited over DGL for a guy that can't, hit water if he found a boat. He's worse than John Lester throwing to first base.
Yes.
He can't shoot a three, and that's the guy that's playing. And now DGL is going to transfer, and it's insane. Yeah.
Again, if Brad learned anything from this game, and he, I'll give him credit for this, and as annoying as it is, because he holds himself accountable, but I find himself holding himself accountable too many times. Learn from, if you're going to hold yourself accountable, you're going to say in the post-game presser that you should have played Dre Gibbs Lawhorn more, then play him more in the next game, right? If you're going to tell us that Trey White is healthy, then freaking play the guy. There's two, the Northwestern game, he came after they lost in Evanston this year. In post-game, he literally said it was like the worst coach game he'd had. Blamed himself for a lot of stuff. It's like, I find myself hearing him blame himself for a lot of things this year. And while I appreciate accountability, because me and you both know there's a lot of coaches in this city here in Chicago that don't like to take blame for anything. My guy Greg Braggs is in the chat right now. He knows, because he covers the Bears. All right. No coach, it feels like that, of any of the teams that I like outside of Illinois, likes to take blame for a lot of things. And so, again, I appreciate him holding himself accountable for a lot of things. But at some point, man, you got to start learning from your mistakes and actually acting on it, right? 100%. And it's so frustrating. And then, so whether it's not playing DGL and Trey White, or why are we only going six people deep? I mean, Dre Gibbs Lawhorn played 3 minutes last night, so it might as well be six people deep. You're playing this high tempo, fast paced type game. These guys are cooked with 10 minutes to go.
It's a good point.
Play your deep roster. It's Dre Gibbs Lawhorn has been a big part of any of the success that you've had in Big Ten play. The game he had against Ohio State, the games before that, even in some of the losses, you could make the argument he was the best player on the floor for them at times. It's just how is him getting sick taking him out of being in the rotation? And Michigan State was a perfect matchup for him, because it's not like they have giant guards.
Perfect. I'm a little bit less with the Trey White thing. I could see him playing, but just because Ben Davis could actually make a shot from three, so I don't mind that as much. But I've been on the DGL train to play for quite a while. I think I even mentioned it. I think I was on Sonny's Locked On Illini pod after Maryland, and was like, he should be playing more. So I'm with you on that. But to your point, it's another point with Brad is we're in the middle of February now, and this team has zero identity, and they have zero idea who they want to play. And it shouldn't be mid-February where it's, out of nowhere, we just played six guys essentially. And that's a real problem. That is on the coach, right? You got, for better or for worse, you got to build an identity. And I'll say this. I listen to a lot of Brad's pressers because they're entertaining. Speaking of the Bears, way unlike the Bears pressers. But some of the stuff he's done this year, like the Trey White thing. Oh yeah, he was sick. Okay, fine. Then you didn't play him for 2 more games. So you didn't lie, but you weren't really telling the truth. You didn't play him because you made a decision. Or, even like the Tommy stuff was weird. It was like he had strep, and then all of a sudden he had mono, which I get. Those two things like typically go together. Bring in my medical degree here that I don't have. But like, it was just, you know what I'm saying? Like that whole thing was weird. Like they forced him to play. Then he got super sick. And then all of a sudden he's got mono. And then we see him on the bench at the Maryland game. Like the whole thing, like everything this year, the point I'm trying to make has just not been handled well, which might be a good segue to talk about your halftime experience.
Yeah, man. Well, before we get to Terrence, because I have a lot to say about the Terrence Shannon stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing that.
I feel like the first 2 months of the season, the non-conference schedule, was it everything I expected? Yes. I was hopeful. I was optimistic. I felt pretty strong that Illinois would go 2-2 against the 4 SEC schools they played. And I thought that they would beat Arkansas, and I thought they would beat Mizzou. They had every chance to beat Tennessee. We all knew that they probably weren't going to beat Alabama, considering how early it was in November and this team being brand new. Right. For sure. I said after they lost to Alabama that it is a game that we would look back at and say that was a loss that helped them get to where they're at. Well, we are here in February, and what has that loss done for us other than just nothing? At least at this point, like when I say that it's fine what they did in non-conference, it's also like, well, you could have gone 3-4 against the SEC. You should have beat Tennessee at home. You had every chance to, and this isn't non-conference, but it was during that time period, losing to Northwestern in Evanston when you led by 6 with 2 minutes to go. Losing to Northwestern in Evanston, losing to USC, losing to Nebraska, and losing to Rutgers. And I will say Rutgers should have a better record with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey on that team. I don't know why they're so bad, but whatever. Those are 4 crucial losses. That's why we're sitting here and we're asking ourselves, if they finish 18-14 and miss the tournament, like, is this a possibility of happening? And those 4 losses are huge, are going to be the reason that if they do get in, they'll probably get somewhere between a 7 or a 10 seed. And like the pure delusion and optimism that I'm just naturally born with has me still talking myself into maybe being a 5 seed, because I expect them or hope that they can bounce back and beat Wisconsin and beat Iowa. And I think they can win one of the 2 between Michigan and Purdue. My delusion, my optimism, my hopeless optimism, those are the games that I feel like they can win. I don't think they can beat Duke at this. I know it's a sick disease. It's a very sick disease. And it's why it's perfect that I like the
When's
Cubs.
The last time we beat Purdue?
Probably when Iowa was here, I want to say. Or maybe the year they won the Big Ten, which would have been the year after Iowa left.
Did we beat them? I remember we lost in double overtime on Martin Luther King Day to them at home, and I can't imagine we went into West Lafayette that year and won. So
yeah,
I think the last time we beat them,
I feel better about beating Michigan than I do Purdue. But Braggs is in the comments. I'm sure Braggs knows that Purdue isn't as good as Purdue last year. But yeah, they have their hold over us, right? And Painter's a better coach.
They have a better coach.
They have a better coach. I'm just saying my optimism, if you want me to have any optimism at all, though, like beating, I think they can beat Michigan. I think they can beat Wisconsin. And I think they can beat Iowa. That's 3 games. That's pure optimism. Now, realistically, I'm hoping they win 2 of those 3. I'm hoping at this point, right? So to bring it all back around on just how the season has gone, like with Brad, I felt like going into January, I felt like they were in a good spot. They 100%. Won by 90 against Oregon. They almost blew it to Washington, but they won. They won 2 road games on the other side of the country, coming back to Champaign. And then what happened against USC happened. They didn't have KJ because of the wrist or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Then they bounced back. They beat Penn State by 90.
They beat Penn State before USC,
right?
So they were rolling,
right?
They lost to USC right. And then came back and blew out Indiana with KJ.
Right. Yes. 3. They won their first 3 in January, and then USC happened, and then they win by 90 at Indiana. Mike Woodson, fire Mike Woodson chants, all this, and then Michigan State happened, which
that was the turning point.
Yes, and you can make the argument that they got screwed by the refs, but they had every chance to win the game despite it, and that's why I felt so confident about last night's game. And then what happened? They don't score in the final 8.5 minutes.
Unbelievable.
It goes back to what you've said and what I've said. This team just doesn't make sense, and they're not going to give you a full 40 minutes. No. They're just not.
And, you made the point about I was with you. So, like, when they lost that Friday night game to Northwestern, total weekend ruiner for me. Yeah. And I was like, oh, but you know what? They have to go through this. Young team, learn how to close on the road, et cetera, et cetera. And then same thing with Tennessee. Hey, number 1 team in the country. KJ needs to learn. You have to be really detail-oriented. Like, I was like, hey, these are things. Except they haven't learned from it. It's gotten worse. That's the problem.
Yeah. Like, and that's what I'm trying to say is like we were at a point where they need to be a well-oiled machine at this point, or at least see some actual progress. And we just haven't. You can make the argument about continuity and all of this stuff in November and how you need to get to that. But like the fact that they haven't got to that point here in mid-February is so concerning.
Not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, even if they were just showing signs, like last night, if that game went the way I thought it was going to go, which was a double-digit win, I know. I just don't.
I thought it too. I thought it too.
I don't think Michigan State's that good. It would be like, oh, like this is kind of right? Like they're showing signs. It's mid-February. And, you always hear you want to be peaking in March. We got plenty of time. Now we're about to go through a gauntlet schedule and face all these monster teams. But we're starting to – I just wanted to see some signs. There is no signs. This team, now they beat Minnesota and UCLA, but they have not had a 2-0 week. Since they beat Oregon and Washington back-to-back to start 2025. Like, I need to see that first. Like, I just –
yeah.
I wish I had your optimism, but people know that watching me, I don't. So I don't know why I would even suggest that.
Well, and everyone knows that everyone who watches me knows that I get too optimistic and I get too delusional. The only thing that I don't do that with is the Bears. And there's good reason for that.
No,
right?
I just always take a pessimistic route, which,
it's easier to do that. It absolutely is. And I don't blame you. And I don't blame any Illini fan who completely disagrees with me because it's hard for me to even muster that optimism up or hope.
Just don't want to start out 0-2 in Japan.
Yeah. Yeah. Just win one of them. Right. Okay.
Boy. All right.
I guess other things related to this game before we go to Terrence Shannon. Yeah. Morez Johnson is a dog and they better do whatever it takes to make sure he stays.
Yeah, I hope so.
He is fucking awesome. Okay. Now, the rest of the team at this point, all I'm asking for going to Wisconsin is get back to playing 8 deep. As much as it pissed me off that Trey White's not playing, Jake Davis continues to play well, and he's taken those minutes. He's one of the few people who is making shots. So I guess on one hand, you can make the argument that because Jake Davis is making shots and playing well in offensive rebounding, why should Trey White play over him?
That's where I'm at. Yeah.
Right. I think you can find a way to get him into the game when Kylan Boswell has 0 points and just doing cardio for 40 minutes. But, because at least you'll have the better defense on the court because it's not like Kylan's doing anything for you offensively. So
at all.
Right. Right. So it is. Like, I just feel like you gotta play Trey White and you gotta play DGL some. You can't go 6 deep and play the type of game you're playing.
You're gonna see a lot of DGL Tuesday.
I hope so.
I don't know about Trey, but you will. I think you just. I don't think it's that difficult. Play them both a lot in the first half, and then whoever's playing better, ride them because it's you don't know what you're gonna get from these guys. I say this now. Boswell, maybe gets out of his funk and hits a couple because all it takes in this sport is 1 or 2. Yeah. And everybody's the same. Like even LeBron James, like he missed 20 in a row. And then all of a sudden you see one go through and you get hot. So you're never far away from recovering it. But goodness gracious, he sure feels like it, Boswell.
I know, man. And it's so disappointing too because I was so excited when they got him. But
Morez, just real quick. That was
If there's anything to be optimistic about at all, like legitimately, it's Morez Johnson.
If he takes a leap next year and just figures out the one thing offensively is like when he catches a pass, if he just keeps it up high, doesn't dip it, just goes right to the rim and continues to grow, like he'll be, I don't know if he'll ever be like a Kofi because he's not a back to the basket, like jump hook guy, but like he'll be a two-way monster.
Yeah. And in the second half of this game, they were feeding it to him because it looked like they were not going to allow Will Riley to get hot. And so that left him open under the basket a lot in that first 10 minutes of the second half. And that's how they got into the bonus. And Jay in the chat here, he says, you guys probably already discussed this. We hadn't. After you are in the bonus with 12 plus minutes left and you continue to chuck threes, it's baffling.
Yeah, we brought it up briefly in the beginning. Like, it's baffling, and then they get into a trap and whatever. The problem is they just don't have a ton of guys outside of KJ that could just put their head down and get to the foul line. Will Riley's like 17, 18 years old. He still avoids contact, whatever. But yes, it was the way they closed that game was coaching malpractice.
Yeah. Well, and my point is like Morez Johnson was eating. Keep going to him because they weren't going to let those guards
and making his free throws, which he doesn't usually do.
Right. So I don't know. Is like you say, coaching malpractice, whether it's only going basically 6 deep, whether it's the fact that you don't play a zone at all when Michigan State's near the bottom of the league and like 3-point field goals made.
Everything.
Just those are my two biggest things with Brad in this game for sure.
I agree.
Okay. Terrence Shannon jersey ceremony.
Oh boy.
They don't retire numbers at Illinois, Sam. I've learned that online. All right. And as you probably know, Illini fans I get very prideful whenever opposing fan bases come at us for retiring numbers for guys who didn't win national titles and stuff like it's like we're not a blue blood school, folks. Shut the fuck up. But so I was in section 244, like I said, I was at the very top, and the video was awesome that they made for him. And, they had a video where like Brad like sent a message to him. They obviously pre-recorded it and played it, and like this is what makes this loss hurt so much more is the fact that like the atmosphere in the State Farm Center was, I would guess for this season, probably the best. I would guess. And I probably like at the beginning of this game, I would guess that the atmosphere, everything, the buzz was palpable, right?
It sounded like it on TV too.
It was an incredible atmosphere. And it's almost like I tweeted this to you last night, man. Like I felt immediately after they fucked up the banner by putting it upside down, and whoever it is, like I don't call for people to be fired unless you play for the Cubs and you are not doing your job. I don't call for a lot of people to be fired, but whoever fucked that up needs to be fired. Like I felt so bad for Josh Whitman to have to basically take the blame. Like it does all fall on him, but like it's not his fault. Like whoever did that, like they should be fired. And it's an embarrassing look. It's an embarrassing, situation. Like, and of course, I knew the moment it happened, it was like, oh man, people are gonna meme this, and we are gonna be we're gonna be joked about for the rest of the year. And the only way that it will go away is if Illinois starts winning. And we just spent 45 minutes talking about how we don't even feel confident in them winning 2 games out of the next 5. Right? This moment for Terrence Shannon Jr. It should have been better. I don't know how you feel about Terrence Shannon Jr., but Terrence Shannon Jr., after what he went through last year, like he's become one of my favorite all-time Illini. Like we talked about before the show, like how 04-05 meant like turned us into fans, or how it turned me into fans. Like if I ran into D Brown on the streets here in the Chicago, I would have there was a little part of me that would just fanboy like no other, right? Him, Luther Head, Darren Williams, Roger Powell, James Augustine, all those guys. But Terrence Shannon Jr., he had a season that we will never see ever again. He had one of the greatest single seasons ever, all while dealing with being accused of rape falsely. And he averaged 28 points per game during postseason play last year, shooting like 40% from the field, or 49% from the field, 40% from three. He literally carried Illinois to the Elite Eight. He had so many moments throughout the season that I will forever remember and cherish when I think about some of my favorite moments in Illini basketball history. And for what happened yesterday, I largely wanted to go to yesterday's game just for that. Like, of course I wanted to go to the game, but I texted my buddy who got me this free ticket. And when I did it, I was thinking about, because I wanted to be there at halftime for that moment, because he was such a big part of my Illini fandom to this point in my life. And for them to let that happen, it's just so inexcusable, dude. It's so inexcusable. And the moment it happened, I felt like this is bad karma. We are going to lose this game. It has nothing to do with why they lost the game.
No,
but you know what I mean. Like, karma is a bitch. Karma is a bitch, and that's how I felt. And it's just, he deserved better, man. He deserved better. I don't know. Maybe if you want to talk about bad omen, like Tim Anderson being there too, with everything that's happened with him, like he's like on leave right now. Like, I don't care that he was there, but it's just,
I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not very familiar with it either, but he's technically on a leave of absence. Like, but he's not with the team. Right. So I don't know what any of that means, but all I know is that it was just a very, like, my buddy like laughed about it. He didn't think it was a big deal. I immediately was like, this isn't good. Like, this is bad. This is bad. And we are going to be trolled about this from opposing fan bases for a very long time, at least for the next 6 months until next season, if the team is good, right? Like, maybe I'm being over dramatic about that part, but it's just not something you do for some of your all-time greats. It's not like Illinois is raising jerseys into the rafters every year, man. It's not like they're doing it every year. And you had one job and you had one shot at this, and you fucked it up. It's embarrassing. It's unacceptable. And even though I didn't go to the University of Illinois, if I was an alum, I'd be sending emails to Josh Whitman or someone, and I'd be telling him, fire whoever fucked that up. That's what I would be doing if I was an alum.
Yeah. No, it's well said. I don't have a whole lot to add. As far as Shannon, so for me, my favorite Illini all time, because he's a good friend of mine, is Brandon Paul. Then I go D Brown. Then I go Darren. Then I go Terrence.
Yeah.
And then Lutherhead rounds out my five. And it's not because of what he did last year production wise. It's what he had to go through while he was doing it. And I can't imagine, like, all of us in life suffer from anxiety or, different things, and you're worried about your future. I mean, can you imagine having to go play high level basketball with fans chanting all these terrible things at you, and deep down that you're innocent, but you don't know how court cases play out. You just don't know that process, right? And he just was unbelievable on the court. Didn't let it affect him, didn't say anything, didn't really even make it a distraction. I mean, and I remember they tried to, like, I think it was ESPN or somebody tried to make it a story before the tournament. And, the way he handled that situation, I had people in my life that are not Illini fans that once I explained to them this story started like, whoa, like, let's get into this. And, there's moments, like iconic moments you think of. For me with Terrence, it's the steal against Iowa State to ice the game. Like, that was such a moment. I know he got shut down against UConn, and that was tough. I mean, we didn't realize at the time, like, Stefan Castle's like, an all rookie of the year guy in the NBA. I mean, and that team was on a different level, but to go to an Elite Eight, and like you said, from the first game of the Big Ten tournament until Iowa State, he was the best player in the country. Yeah. Like, I know Zach Edey, but this guy was averaging 28 plus, and to do that with that hanging over your head, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I would have tapped out. I would have just wanted to get this stuff over with. I couldn't do it. And so the fact that because of that made it even worse that they screwed up his night, because you got to remember, Illinois did suspend him, And then because of all the legal stuff, he got back in. So like that really should have been just a night. And I almost, when I first heard it, I kind of wanted him to do a different night, like a home Iowa or a home, bad team. So it could just be all Terrence, because I thought he really deserved that. But then the way it happened, it's just, it would have stunk if it happened to Kofi, but because it happened to Terrence after everything he had to go through last year, it made a bad basketball game one of the worst nights, I believe, in the history of the basketball program.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Terrence isn't my all-time favorite Illini, but he's definitely in that top 5. And, I made the argument last year on the show that, like, if he were to actually go out there and beat UConn, I would have been able to put him like, greatest Illini ever.
Yeah,
like, because
he put up like 35 or something.
Yeah, like if he would have actually been part of that, a huge upset, it would have been over UConn last year. Like that UConn team, as they went on to win the national title, like in the Kim Pom era, considered, way above so many other teams of the past. But it didn't happen. It is what it is. Like, personally, I just try to not even remember the UConn game, because we didn't have a lot of hope for that game anyway. But
it was a funny moment though, as Illinois got down on a 30-0 run, and then the Cubs were getting blown out by Texas. It was a nice preview to what the rest of 24 turned out to be.
Yeah. But I try to remember the fact that, like,
what did you do during that night? Like, because like I remember, what did you do opening day with Illinois, Iowa State, Sweet 16, and then your pod?
Yeah, so we had opening day. We had a watch party / not pre, but post game show live at Country Club in Wrigley. So obviously the Cubs game was on, and because it was a Cubs event, only the Cubs game was on. So I think Illinois played late that night, and their game basically started at the beginning of our post-game show. So while we're doing post-game for opening day of the Cubs in Texas, I have the Illinois-Iowa State game like up on my phone while we're doing the show. And so then after our show, I watched the rest of the game there at the bar.
I did something like it got timed out for us where I did the show like right around mid to late first half. And then by the time I was done, I got right into the second half.
Yeah, basically. So, you mentioned that, like the steal against Iowa State for the dunk. Like, I think of that. I went to the Northwestern Illinois game in Evanston last year, the first game back coming off the suspension.
That was probably rough.
And like, this is why, like, when the discourse related to Sky Clark just a few days ago, and if like we should have booed him or not. Like, I went to Northwestern and listened to some of the chants these nerds in Evanston are chanting, and I'm like, it's no holds barred in college hoops or just in student sections, man. Like, people don't care. People will chant whatever they want, and so that's kind of why I didn't really care that they booed Sky Clark. Obviously complete different scenarios, but you get what I'm saying. But yeah, that experience, it felt like Illinois against the world. And that's kind of how I was a fan of the team the rest of the way last season, was just like Illinois against the world. Like, everyone's out to get us. Everyone's out to, rooting against this team just because of this stuff hanging over Terrence. And, it's not just the play on the court, like you said, man. Like, the off the court stuff and how it was handled and how the program handled it and how Josh Whitman handled it. Like, it all goes together into why I view Terrence Shannon Jr. so highly regarded within this program, even though he was only here for 2 years.
For sure.
And his first year, it was a year that people wished that we didn't even have to experience, because a lot of people are comparing this season to that year.
And he clearly learned from that year and learned how to lead and learned. And that goes back to having that debate about the transfer portal or whatever, because that continuity, him coming back that second year, was a difference maker. Because even before, the suspension and stuff, he was a different guy. I mean, he was playing really at a high level.
Yeah. The game again he had against Mizzou before the suspension was insane.
Yeah,
insane.
I remember that.
So, it is what it is. We can't change the fact that it happened. All I know is that, like, it sucks because it's what everyone's going to always remember. I feel like.
Yeah. It'll pass.
Yeah. I hope so. I really do. I just think that when his name's brought up in the outside of his playing career, at least, like it might be something that, just in talking with other fans at the bar or something like that. Just like, I hate that we have to like talk about it.
You're talking about the jersey or the story?
The ceremony last night.
Yeah.
Like just the fact that it's like, we all know. And it's like, I wish that I don't have to talk about it with anyone ever again, but I know I'll talk to someone about it whenever, the next time someone goes up in the banner into the rafters or something.
Right. They'll be like, it'll be like a sarcastic cheer. They got it right or something.
Yeah.
I hope over time it fades and his legacy will just be, what he was able to do. But yeah, it was last night was the 2024, 2025 Illini basketball team in a nutshell, literally. I mean, well, that's not the right term, but, hopefully, it's still mid-February and you go into the Kohl Center, get a win, and then play like a classic Illinois big game against Duke where they like hang within 7 for like an hour and a half and lose by 9. And you're like, hey, they hung in there, and then, maybe win 1 or 2, get off the 8-9 game and see if you could salvage a win or 2 in the tournament. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So.
At the same time, this team makes absolutely no sense. Would it really, really surprise you if, like, say they lose at Wisconsin, but then somehow beat Duke?
That would shock me. I will come out if they beat Duke. I'll come back. It wouldn't surprise me if they beat Wisconsin. Prove everything you said. If they beat that team with the way they're playing now, that would be. I mean, who's going to guard Flag? Who's going to guard the other big center they have? I mean, they're monstrous, and that would. If they beat Duke, then you're right. Then anything's up for grabs with this team. They could make a run.
I think the point of what I'm trying to say is that this team just doesn't make sense. They'll lose to USC, they'll lose to Rutgers, they'll lose to Nebraska, but they'll beat Oregon by 90, and they'll, even though they almost blew it, they still beat a really good UCLA team that had won like 6 or 7 in a row.
You're right. You're right. I know what you mean.
They'll beat a good Mizzou team that no one thought was really that good, but they're actually pretty good. They'll beat Arkansas, which whatever, they're not that good, but they can have good games. I would say at this point, like, I don't even know what's the most impressive win on this team's resume. It's probably Oregon or Mizzou.
But that's my thing, Cody. Like, I hear what you're saying. I'm not trying to disagree with you. But when you actually look at it, they haven't really beaten anybody that great.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, yes, they have the ability. Like, if they play like they did in Oregon, they could beat anybody. But their best win is maybe at Oregon or probably now at home Wisconsin.
Yeah. That's fair.
And it's like, that's not that great of a win. Like,
right.
You're right. They haven't really beaten anybody yet that great. Like, if they go into Wisco and win, or they beat Duke, now that's a win where you're like, okay, they can beat anybody. But they haven't. Their wins, their losses have been far more disappointing than the quality of their wins. I mean, even 2 years ago, they had good wins. They beat Texas on a neutral floor. They beat UCLA on a neutral floor. They have no wins of that caliber, I would say. Unless I'm underrating Missouri. I don't know.
I think we underrated Missouri at the time, but they've only helped Illinois' resume since then. The SEC is a gauntlet, and they're ranked, and they're in there. So I don't know. All right, so big picture, I'm optimistic about a 3-2 stretch here to end the year, but
that would be 3-2. 3-2 would get us probably a 6.
Yeah, I'm optimistic because I want to believe in Brad, and I want to believe that when things are as bad as they get with Illinois, like, that's when it's time to buy stock. Like I say, I've said this a lot. I've said this a lot to a lot of friends lately. When Tyler Hansborough said on Field of 68 that he loved Illinois this year, like back in January when people were hyping this team up after they beat Oregon and Washington and Penn State, when he said that they liked Illinois this year, I was pissed because last year he said that he didn't think Illinois would make the NCAA tournament, and then we watched them go to the Elite Eight. I would rather be here for an Illinois team that no one believes in. John Fanta says there's some sort of a problem at Illinois right now. Like, all the guys that field a 68. They're and then
Well,
sleepers.
I don't watch enough content.
I watch too much content because
I don't even know who you're talking about.
Okay, like all these college hoops talking heads, they are all down on Illinois right now, and rightfully so. They deserve to be.
As they should.
They should be. I'm not even saying what they're saying is wrong, but I feel like Brad Underwood teams respond when things are as bad as they can get. And even though this season has been a roller coaster, I still believe with talent alone and the fact that Brad is Brad, and we can sit here and we can make all these little criticisms about his in-game coaching and all this. He still has top 2, top 3 most wins in this conference over the last 5 to 6 years. So I'm going to continue to ride that with my hope and optimism with this team, because I thought I'd seen the worst, but maybe last night was the worst. You can only go up from here. I hope.
Yeah, I agree. And, you got to just, the way I told my friends today is I'm coming in Tuesday with a new attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worrying about these disasters that in the past. And I'm just going, let's just find a way. Like right now, let's go 2 and I'm 2-3. You're 3-2. Let's just go 2-3 these last 5, make the tournament, see if we can play well, win a game. It's never a bad year when you win an NCAA tournament game and go from there and just bring a new attitude instead of like yesterday watching it and going, oh my gosh, here we go again. I'm turning a new leaf and kind of I'm doing the Jason Hayward. I am just, hey, this is a sunk cost. And so let's just, whatever we can do, let's just do it. Okay.
Yeah. At this point, I would take maybe a win in the NCAA tournament. I feel like my expectation every year has been Sweet 16, but at this point with how this team is played, I'll be in that. Get in, maybe win a game.
Win a game, and then get excited for the Saturday or Sunday game. And that's, by that time, the Cubs will be playing and we'll be moved on.
Yes. And then we'll be pissed off at the Cubs when they blow a game in the 8th inning and
in Arizona.
Yeah.
Like late at night on a Saturday.
Yeah. Looking forward to being absolutely pissed off at 8 a.m. because they lost the game in Japan.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'll be doing content for that at 5, and it's gonna be
right.
People are gonna be making fun of how I look in the morning.
All right, man. Well, thanks for joining. You're always welcome to come back on. We went a little over. You gave me you told me an hour. It's an hour and 6 minutes.
That's all right. I'll be okay. My schedule is not that tight.
And I'm sure the people are like, why are they not doing this for Cubs? We've tried, and just schedules and stuff just have not.
It's in the works. It's in the works.
It's in the works. So watch out for that down the road. So, for everyone here in the YouTube chat, sorry I wasn't really able to read a lot of your comments because we've just been ranting for the last hour. Caitlin, John, Braggs, Greg, Sonny, Shane, Jay, Dubs. Thanks for all hanging out. Hit the like button on your way out of here. Subscribe if you're new here. I'll be they play on Tuesday? Sonny?
Tuesday night, I believe.
Yeah. So I'll either be back here Tuesday night or Wednesday sometime to either be really delusional or be really pissed off. So come back and see which one you're going to get. So, thanks again for everyone watching, and I'll see you then. Sam, thanks for joining me, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me.